As cities and populations boomed, new political structures fought over power. Local governments began to grow more and more inefficient. Politicians sought to manipulate voters and gain power for themselves. This leads to the urban political machine. The political machine was an organized group of political officials who controlled activities of a political party within a city. Think of a clubhouse or a fraternity in politics. With migration and urbanization, political parties sought to take advantage of chaos to control political office. They would accomplish this goal by manipulating voters. Officials of the political machine gave favors and perks to voters and businesses in return for support at the ballot box. The idea was you get my back and I'll get yours.
The structure of the political machine was set up like a pyramid. At the top, we have the city boss. The city boss controlled most local services and chose candidates to elect. Often, the city boss was the most powerful man in the city. Next, in the middle, we have ward bosses. Ward bosses gave local favors and ensured precinct votes were secured. The ward bosses reported to the city boss and delivered on promises that were given to the voters. And finally, at the bottom, we have block captains and precinct workers. These members rounded up voters in neighborhoods and city blocks. They escorted voters to the ballot box in order to make sure they voted the way they wanted them to.
The city boss ran the political machine. The process begins when the city boss selects a candidate for public office. This candidate usually was in the pocket of the city boss and was nothing but a puppet or a lackey who would do the bidding of the city boss once elected to office, ensuring that the city boss maintains power and keeps the political machine prosperous. The city boss could promise jobs, housing, citizenship, favorable decisions in court, and other perks, and he would hand down the ability to deliver on these promises to the ward bosses. Reporting to the ward bosses were the block captains and precinct workers, who had direct contact with the voters. Once promises were made, voters would then go to the ballot box on election day and vote for the candidate that had been selected by the city boss, ensuring that the political machine's candidate won and keeping the city boss in control of political affairs within the city.
Political machines preyed on newly arrived immigrants and struggling businesses the most. They took advantage of culture shock, promised housing, jobs, and quick naturalization for worried new immigrants. They hired second-generation immigrants to speak to newly arriving immigrants in their native language.
Bill's got mixed feelings as regards the Irish.
Bill, deliver these good and fervent folk to the polls on a regular basis, and there'll be a handsome price for each vote goes Tammany's way.
Businesses could get quick licenses and bypass paperwork. They could also see competitors disappear in return for cash and votes.
So what's the benefit to the city boss and the political machine? Why start a political machine in the first place? The answer is graft. Graft is the illegal use of political power for personal gain. Here's how it worked. Machines would get monetary kickbacks for employment. They would have workers overbill cities for jobs done, like building bridges, public transportation, streets, and buildings, and then skim the extra money off the top and pocket it for themselves. They controlled the police department so that the cops would look the other way. In order to keep power, political machines grew desperate. They would commit voter fraud when enough votes couldn't be bought. This included having voters vote multiple times in an election. It also included using fake names and late-night trips to the cemetery, where the names of dead people would be taken off tombstones and put onto registered voters' lists, where they would vote for the political machine's candidate.
The most famous political machine was Tammany Hall in New York. Run by William Boss Tweed, Tammany Hall's fraud and graft was over the top. For example, the construction cost of New York County Courthouse grew to nearly $13 million, about $178 million in today's dollars. One outrageous example was a carpenter was paid $360,000, roughly $4.9 million in today's money, for 1 month's labor. People began to question the validity of their work, and helped by negative cartoons by Thomas Nast, outrage over their graft led to its downfall. Tweed was arrested and convicted of fraud. Estimates claim that Tweed defrauded New York out of tens of millions of dollars in kickbacks.
As the bold and egregious graft of political machines was uncovered, public outrage led to reform. Across the nation, politicians were pressured to change the ways that they did business and prevent future fraud. In fact, the criminal activity and the fraud of the age of political machines led to a new era of politics. At the turn of the century, politicians were elected in a new wave of reform, and they set out on a political agenda to make government more responsive to the people.